Africans, black people, do not view the eating and killing of animals to eat as violence.
Absolutely, because I know people are always going to bring up the ethics, but people have to understand that ethics are based on your culture. They're based on your culture. So I would never let someone who is not coming from a black ancestral perspective come and tell me what ethical is. I might point out some contradictions in their own culture, in their own flexible morality and ethics, but I would never let them come and define for me what is ethical behavior.
And welcome to the Ancestral podcast, the show where we provide practical solutions to modern day problems, all from a black ancestral perspective. I'm Coach Akai Maok.
And I am Mama Aki Pekala.
And we are priests of the raw tradition of ancient Kemet. And on today's show, we'll be talking about the problems in modern spirituality, part 2, the colonization of the ancestral diet. So just as in our last video, we spoke about the raw tradition, we spoke about the importance of having the force in today's spirituality in terms of your personal development practice. From a Chinese medicine perspective, food is a part of your air, your sleep, your flexibility, your exercise. All of these things are called postnatal qi. And food is definitely a most powerful lever in the force of postnatal qi.
You're absolutely right about the importance of diet and what a huge lever it is in our health. And the reason why we're calling this the problems with modern spirituality part 2 is that a lot of the issues that we have with the racism in modern spirituality pour over into the solutions that people have to the destruction of ancestral diets all over. We're specifically focused on Black ancestral diets today, but we know that the modern food system is doing no favors to anyone. So just getting into a little bit of, the issues that we're facing. They've been so well espoused, so many great documentaries that talk about the health disparities, especially when it comes to African descended people, to Black people, that this modern food system and the way the food has been tampered with really does not mesh well with our genetics and with our requirements to really thrive. But most of the solutions, ironically, still are tainted with that level of racism.
Yeah.
Right? So we look for solutions, and what is the biggest solution that is posited today? We see a big plant-based movement, a big vegan movement. I was a vegan for 14 years. And a part of that, what people would consider a drastic decision, was a part of me seeing so much illness in my family, seeing illness in my community, and being willing to just do something revolutionary to get away from those illnesses and those patterns. Unfortunately, when I look to spirituality, the message I got from spirituality is that in order to be more spiritual, I need to let go of the consumption of animal products, do 100% plant products. That makes me have not only a higher moral character, but that's going to just always improve my health.
You're going to have a high vibration. You're going to have a high vibration.
Downside, right?
Yeah.
That I vibrate higher and that the food has more chi. And there were all these ways that was explained to me. And even in the Black spirituality sphere, there are very pervasive ideas of food having a higher vibration, if it excludes animal products.
And that it is ancestral to not eat meat, that your ancestors, the people who built the pyramids, people who planned the building of the pyramids, the advent of civilization was created by people who were doing raw vegan diets and possibly drinking smoothies.
Right. And there's a pervasive thought. I don't know if this is just Black Americans that this thought is affecting, but that colonialism is what really brought the barbarism of the consumption of meat. So it's very interesting because initially on that vegan diet, I felt better. I did have relief from allergies, especially because there's a dairy allergy, and we know that not all Black people are allergic to dairy, because that's a very popular notion that it's like, if you're Black, you don't even know. We know we have the Maasai. We know we have.
I'm not allergic to dairy. I have the genetics to not.
People who
thrive
that problem. And who have thrived before their contact with Europeans off of animal products, off of dairy. But in my particular paternal line, dairy is not well tolerated, even though most of us still, will indulge, but it's not well tolerated. So I did have relief from that. I felt better. But I think what people fail to acknowledge is that in that journey for me, I know I became so much more aware of the food system. Most people do. They become so much more conscious of food labels, of additives, and of all of this evil genius in our food system, that they are eating better as a whole. And I think that a lot of what I credit to taking out meat was essentially, I just leveled up my diet. I was eating more fresh fruits and vegetables. I was making more meals from scratch. I started out, as many people do, like heavy on those substitutes, because I'm like, listen, if I can't have no ribs, I'm about to have some vegan ribs, and heavy on the substitutes. But after a while, that did get old to me, and I transitioned to what they call like a whole food plant-based diet, where it's not that I cut out, my fake chicken leg for eternity, but it just was not a regular part of my grocery shopping list and a regular part of my consumption. And even doing all those things and eating that whole food plant-based diet, I ended up having some chronic deficiencies. My iron and my blood count did drop drastically low. That did happen. But in other ways, I would say it was more energetic. Thankfully, it didn't show up so much in my clinicals, but the issues that I dealt with seeing acupuncturists and people who practice classical Chinese medicine was that I really lacked warmth. And
how many vegans are cold and been cold for like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years,
Right. And I mean, I ate curries and lentil and all these spices.
Wear extra layers, and you're still cold.
And, did all of these things to observe a diet that would still enhance my yang, but it was like I ended up taking herbal formulas. I mean, I remember one year on my taxes, I literally could write off almost $10,000 from seeing an acupuncturist and just looking for that relief that was not coming from my very high spiritual lifestyle. So for me, once I really dug into the history, because I'm like, in the Black community, we hear all the time, we honor our ancestors, we love our ancestors, we're our ancestors' wildest dreams. I'm like, okay, a part of honoring your ancestors and a part of Sankofa is
respect.
Is respect, is looking back to see any problems that we have. We're looking back first to see, did our ancestors encounter these problems? Do they have the solution to these problems? And the fact that we don't even need to go back 100 years, we can go back 50 years and see that the proliferation of many of these diseases, of the obesity and all the metabolic dysfunction that we see, was not prevalent in places where they practiced their ancestral diet. We know that the Black ancestral diet is a solution for us. And that Black ancestral diet does not exclude animal products. I don't care what anyone has told you, your ancestral diet, and this is not just for Black ancestral people, this is for people all over the globe, has included animal products to varying degrees. I'm not going to pretend it's a monolith, because it does vary in the amount of animal products, but we know
what animals and what parts of the animals might be taboo. The people who built the pyramids, the people who organized the building of the pyramids, they were eating meat. Absolutely. The people who built Timbuktu, the libraries of Timbuktu,
and the priests,
I was told that at a young age. I was told that as a very
it was the spiritual people who abstained. But yet you read the spiritual literature and you see these references to meat and to drink.
Yes.
And it is not a low, barbaric behavior. And it's interesting, because I know we're going to talk about this later when we get into our next segment, but this concept of ethics and what's ethical. So I know you did some deep diving into the history of veganism and everything. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So to dive into the history first, we're going to start with the short form and then we're going to go to long form and we're going to come back to modern times. So the short form is the word vegan is not born until the late 1940s. It was started by a guy, Donald Watson, and his wife. And he came up with the term of the word, saying that he would start with the first three letters of vegetarian and end with the last two letters of vegetarian, VEGAN, because it was beginning and ending of vegetarian. Most vegans people who classify, this is their identity. Black people we're talking about. This is our identity. We are vegan. A white man came up with this identity in the 1940s, and I'll tell you why. What you don't know about the history is that this argument between Europeans and even in Indo-Europeans in India, this argument about, well, we're going to abstain from animals, but you are still eating eggs and drinking milk and drinking ghee. And we're like, no, you can't do that. You have to abstain from all the animals. This argument has happened in Europe. It came to the Americas. It started in India. Most of the vegan, when you have your earliest records of the vegan diet in the Indus Kush Valley, there's still evidence that it's not very clear how many people actually stopped eating milk and eggs. That debate has been going on for about 3,000 years, technically. Donald Watson and others got mad that vegetarians were still drinking milk and eating eggs. So their reasoning, what they called a revolution to stop it, birthed this word vegan that you identify with. And remember, Donald Watson is not a practitioner of the Hindu faith. He's not anybody who would be classified as spiritual, yet this word then gets associated with spiritual. And it happened about 10 years later. But before we get there, in the 1940s, we also have Gandhi and the nonviolence movement. Right, we're going to go to the long form now. The nonviolence movement based on the doctrine of ahimsa, which can be traced back into India at least 2,000 years. Right, this doctrine of nonviolence. And so once we get into the Black ancestral perspective and these differing opinions culturally, Africans, Black people, do not view the eating and killing of animals to eat as violence.
Absolutely, because I know people are always going to bring up the ethics, but people have to understand that ethics are based on your culture. They're based on your culture. So I would never let someone who is not coming from a Black ancestral perspective come and tell me what ethical is. I might point out some contradictions in their own culture, their own flexible morality and ethics, but I would never let them come and define for me what is ethical behavior.
Yes. And ahimsa becomes a code of conduct in Hinduism, and they say that if you practice it, it can lead to you escaping the cycle of rebirths. Once again, if you watch our earlier episode, from a Black ancestral perspective, Black people, wherever we are in the world, do not believe in escaping the cycle of rebirth, because that theology is based upon the fact that the earth is hell, that living here is suffering, and you must do everything you can to escape it. So ahimsa, nonviolence, this doctrine that is the baseline of veganism, or becomes the baseline of veganism in 1960, is not a Black ancestral perspective. It's not ancestral. The Kemites never said it. You can go look for it yourself. The Africans in Yoruba, in the Akan, wherever we go, the empires of Ghana, of Songhai, the Mayans, the Olmecs, the indigenous people here never said that. Right? The Native Americans, the indigenous people here, did rituals before they went on a hunt. It was a ceremonial sacrifice, and we see those same ceremonial sacrifices in Kemet. The god Hetep Twawu, the god of meat and drink. When you're doing a ritual to Sekhmet, oh, you sacrificing meat. Oh, you sacrificing blood. It has to happen. You think Sekhmet wants a bowl of beans and some dandelions? Stop playing. Let's stop playing here. Let's stop playing games here. In 1960, an Indian man, last name Singh, he starts the American Vegan Society, where he takes ahimsa, he combines it with the word vegan from Donald Watson. And here we have our current modern day understanding and living of vegan being associated with spirituality. We're talking about a theoretical model that is 60 years old, yet we have Black people, so-called gurus, and many of them espousing these non-violent, these non-eating meat byproducts as a path to enlightenment.
And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that because there are always going to be many cultural paths, but do not pass off your Indo-European thoughts, culture, beliefs as African. As this is your indigenous, you're getting back to your
and
roots.
the entire way for spirituality for all people, all the people on the globe need to follow this because this is the path to enlightenment. I'm telling you why it's not the path to enlightenment. When I go do my blood work, or when I went and did my blood work, and my testosterone level is low, my vitamin B is low, I'm feeling cold, I don't feel so enlightened. But of course, there's all these rationalizations of why that's enlightened. Period.
And mind you, this is taking like our supplements
cabinet.
Yeah. Was state of the art supplements.
Yeah, I know vegans who got rooms full of supplements. The supplements are old and expired now because of all the things they need to do. And then it's funny because it's this contradiction, because it's like, if you have to take all of this to be spiritual, if you have to take all of this to be in a natural diet, and sitting somewhere along the line should tell you that it's not so natural. You're not adapting. You're not living ma'at.
Right, and by no means are we saying that these nutraceuticals, that these supplements cannot be a part of you achieving health goals that you need, but we're just saying where it becomes just like a way of life.
A replacement.
You're taking more supplements than you're eating food, trying to correct these imbalances and everything. That's a telltale sign that, like, okay, something's off here.
Yes.
Something's off here, because herbal medicine has always been a part of our tradition.
Yes. Once again, equating this animal eating diet as high vibrational. Let's go back to Gandhi. Gandhi is a practicing ahimsa. He's practicing Hinduism. He's looked at as this high moral character. But that high moral character, those high vibrations, though that energy was not expressed to Black people. He called us words that were equivalent to the N word. He called us dirty. He called us all of these things. And yet we are taking on an ideology in which he is a face of, and saying that this is who we are. And then to disrespect our ancestors and say that this is who they were. Right. So I also want to talk about my sojourn into veganism. I wasn't a vegan for 14 years. I was vegan probably for like 5-6 years. But and I got into it because of books that I read. I wanted to be strong like a gorilla. I want to change the game. I can get strong. I'm a martial artist. I'm an athlete. I boxed, amateur boxer for years. It's like, I want to be strong. I want to live. And it's also equated. The danger with warriors is that when you're trying to align spirituality with your martial abilities, spirituality has already been sullied. So now this idea of being a spiritual calm warrior means that I'm going to lay off the meat. In some instances, that can calm you down, supposedly, right? It can calm you down a little bit. But it wasn't until I started to experience, when I was flying as a flight attendant, the fatigue, the receding of my hairline, the loss of my hair. All of this happened, the loss of weight, change in my skin complexion. All this happened on a vegan diet. And of course, when you're in certain spiritual esoteric communities, people have this kind of approach that is like, forget Western medicine. So, and of course, Western medicine has its failures and stuff like that. So it's like you kind of stay in this very right brain mentality, and you don't go get the checkups that you need. Well, I had to snap out of that eventually, and I went to get my checkups. And when I did it, I saw my blood work, and I saw how bad certain things were. And here I am doing all of this kidney, Chinese medicine, doing all this kidney tonification, trying to correct symptoms of low kidney qi, which are correlated with symptoms of low testosterone. I'm trying hours just getting it. Iron crotch, qigong.
I don't know anyone who was putting in more time in qigong than you. Yeah, I really don't. And it's one thing I'm like, wow, this guy's really disciplined.
And it would last for a little bit. I find a new qigong, always constantly trying to find something to improve my energy, forgetting the hierarchy. You're not going to build qi until you have enough jing. And that is one of the purposes of eating animal products and those hormones that come. So after introducing meat back into my diet, of course, not only did my energy and my mood change, and my mood change. Low T is one of those symptoms, is the anxiety, is the, it isn't talked about enough about how dangerous it is for a man to have low testosterone. Just psychologically, the brain changes that happen when your hormones are off. But we could talk about that in another video. The moment I introduced it, and my blood work changed and things changed, and it's almost like a joy of life came back.
Yes.
A joy of life came back.
Yes.
So Yeah.
Yes. So, we've talked about the solutions to all the health issues that have been posited and that are, gaining a lot of traction. And it is our duty, our charge from our ancestors to bring a Black ancestral perspective. And I know that's not the perspective that everyone is looking for, but I know that is the perspective that many people are looking for. And I could not leave this earth not speaking on something when I see, certain figureheads in the Black spiritual community and figureheads in the health community that are not doing Sankofa. They are not approaching it from a Black ancestral perspective, however you want to slice it. And I just want to give the example of, because we do know that the standard American diet that most people are following, the SAD diet, is a diet that creates heat, what they call heat, right? When you're not eating enough cooling and rejuvenating foods, and you're eating a lot of rich, spicy, oily foods, you do develop heat condition.
Yeah.
So switching to a diet that takes out meat, which is a source of yang, which is a positive source of yang that can help balance you when you have a balanced diet, but removing that for a time and consuming a plant-based diet can bring you relief and help
a lot of benefits in the beginning.
Right?
Yeah, in the beginning.
Because abstaining from meat and having periods of purification in your diet are all ancestral practices.
Yes.
Those are ancestral practices. Yes. But the prescription that for you to have a high vibration
as an absolute,
to be spiritual, and to be the healthiest being on this earth, that you need to avoid touching animal products, that they're filthy and they're going to make you feel. That is not your Black ancestral tradition.
In the words of Malcolm X, who told you that, right? Who told you to hate yourself? Who told you that meat was filthy? Who told you that to be spiritual you had to leave meat alone? Really? Go examine it. Go question that.
Please go examine for yourselves. But of course, we would not have criticism for the solutions that have been posited if we don't have our own solution. What we have come up with, and this is the first time you're hearing about it publicly, but it has been my brainchild in particular, that is the G.L.A.D diet. Now, this is an old diet, but new in some ways. So that G in G.L.A.D stands for grounding in science and tradition. We at Astro Aura really value being cutting edge, and as did our ancestors, right? When we talk about the great civilizations, the Empire in Benin, we talk about the Empire in Kemet, we talk about the Black Mayans,
the Black China,
who founded that civilization. Of course, they try to tell us it's aliens as usual, but but we know the truth. We know that they were all cutting edge for their time. So keeping up with technology, not feeling like holding on to your tradition means not evolving with the time. So we have technology available. You can go and get blood work and see specifically what's going on in your body. We use the continuous glucose monitors. We use them periodically to assess how foods are affecting us and how we feel. Most importantly, how we feel, but also being able to look at that data. So
along with divination too, to assist to looking at that data.
Absolutely. So grounded in science and tradition. We also promote eating local foods. Now, many of us don't live in our ancestral lands. Some of us live in our ancestral lands, but don't know it. But regardless, when you move to a certain place, there are adaptations to the climate, to the altitude. And Inter is so wise and infinite wisdom that there are always going to be plants and herbs in that locality that help you to thrive wherever you are. So even though we promote very much understanding what your ancestral diets are and bringing those foods, as many, we know there's been so much exchange with maize coming from the Yucatan and coming over, and that's one of the main staples in Africa, even though I've seen that there is a move to the ancestral grains, which I'm really happy about, going back to sorghum and pearl millet and finger millet and making those the primary, because something about it, they're actually a lot easier to grow. They're a lot easier to grow. They're
sorghum
a lot more nutritious. And it's wonderful to see it becoming, of the movement to say, hey, let's prioritize this even over corn, because the thing about corn, because my Mayan ancestry on my maternal side, we love our tamales and we love our tortillas, but the corn is nixtamalized with a base that basically makes some of the nutrients bioavailable. So when you look at that great civilization and all of those beautiful pyramids and their spiritual texts, and it was a thriving civilization, just know that even though corn was their main staple, that their processing of it is not how it's processed today. Also, corn gets a really bad rep because of the
GMO,
of it being genetically modified to oblivion. But there are still strains of corn that are not genetically modified, and keeping those seeds and making sure that those seeds stay in existence, growing those seeds, is also a part of food justice and of us taking back control of our ancestral traditions. So that G, that was a little long. I went over the G and the L. So local and seasonal. I put seasonal in there because we spoke about living according to cycles and how
elements.
that's a part of Ma'at, is the observance of the moon, of the stars, of the cycles, and making sure that you're eating that way. So when it comes to eating, that's eating seasonally.
And I know that might sound a little weird to say Ma'at and didn't say moon, sun, and stars, because the way that Ma'at has been shown to the world is very off and perverted and really not what our ancient Kemetic ancestors said. And we'll be having a video later on talking about the real Ma'at, the way that she in Ma'ar, he, her masculine side, wanted to be known and wanted to be spoken. Just wanted to put that in there.
Listen, I can't wait. Okay, I can't wait. So so local and seasonal and ancestral diet. And we've talked about the importance of ancestry. And I know that's spoken of in a broad way, but for each person, that's going to individualize what they're eating, because all of us have different ancestry. I know here in America, many people are just like, well, I'm just black, but we have ways of seeing where your bloodline really comes from.
Yeah.
And that can give you clues as to what foods are really going to nourish you. And not just nourish you physically, but it's also nurturing a relationship with your ancestors. Now, if you are in a spiritual tradition where you're able to make contact and actually speak and receive direct communication and guidance from your ancestors, eating the foods and even preparing the foods as offering for them of what they ate traditionally is a whole nother way of deepening those ancestral relationships. So I want to speak about that spiritual aspect as well. So we're not doing sad, but we're doing glad. Okay. So glad we have our grounded in science and tradition, local and seasonal foods, ancestral diet, the GL.A.D diet.
Yeah, let's go,
and
champ.
We have 9 core principles that we celebrate.
Yes.
Because we use the acronym CELEBRATE for these principles. And we're very excited to celebrate with you today, because this is the birth of something old, yet something new, and something very much needed. Very much needed. So that C stands for celebration. Celebration and joy. Because food, unfortunately, in spiritual circles, has been associated with something that's preventing you from
achieving
austerity
and uniting with God,
enlightenment, and it's really not ancestral. No. It's definitely not Black ancestral, because food has always been a source of pleasure. Food tasting delicious. Okay, don't let anyone tell you that some bland food is going to get you to heaven. That's
not what it says in some of the spiritual texts in ancient Kemet, the coffin text and the Runu Perdem Heru, so-called Book of the Dead. I mean, they're talking about eating bread and offering cakes and stuff inside of people becoming enlightened. I mean,
and most spiritual celebrations across tradition involve special foods that have special preparations. Some that take days to prepare. So this idea that your food is where you're going to be disciplined and have this austerity, so that you can be
you can unite with one with all, and be high vibratory. And some people, they're like, I don't even eat any food. Some people are like, no, if you don't even eat any food. There's traditions like that come out of India, where India has had to pass laws in the last couple of years to prevent people from themselves as a way to get to enlightenment.
Yes. So Black ancestral perspective, we celebrate, we enjoy the food. The first E in celebration stands for our essential fats, and really not so much we know they're essential, but how do we acquire them? Because there is a lot of health problems that have been linked to extracting these seed oils
It's
and
not being
extracting
said.
oils from places that we shouldn't. Even the petrochemicals that abound, and I know this is a little off topic, but in skincare, those are not the oils that are good for us. But when we get our essential oils
You would know. You're so
from,
beautiful. You would know.
thank you. Don't be making me giddy on this show,
Okay.
okay? When we look at where those fats should come from, we're looking at getting our fats from meat that has had its proper diet, or that is wild, that we know is eating its proper diet, from nuts and from seeds. We're not looking at cottonseed oil and canola oil and soybean oil and all of these oils that you really can't extract without these man-made processes.
Yeah.
Safflower oil and all these other oils, like, no, leave it out and you're going to be much healthier.
Okay.
The L in celebration stands for our local and seasonal foods, which I talked about before because that's the same L from G.L.A.D. The second E in celebrate is for the energetics of food, because we are looking at the energetics of food. Some food is more yang, is more fiery. Some food has a more yin quality, is more watery. We need a balance of flavors in our diet, right? So we have the bitter, we have the sour. We're looking for a balance of energy in our diet ultimately. And based off of our constitution, we may need to turn up, one of these categories a little more to bring balance to us. But it is important for us to understand the energetics of food and to apply that. And I know we've been studying traditional African medicine. I know you have a lot of extensive training, and I've studied for years classical Chinese medicine, which is the birth child of our Black ancestors.
Yeah, Kemet and China were linked. There's just mountains of information from the Medut to the Word to the Interu. I mean, Shang and Shia and Kemet were unified. They were united. So a lot of the five element theory, particularly because some people try to argue that five element theory didn't happen before the Zhao dynasty, but you have the Wufang Shangti, and the tastes and all that stuff. It can be connected back to Kemet and Renanet, but that's another video.
B in celebrate stands for bounty, because when you are eating an ancestral diet, especially when you have some hand in the production of the food, you'll see that there is so much bounty. Growing up, we had a pomegranate tree, we had a mulberry tree, and a black walnut tree. Now, at the time, I didn't know how to process black walnuts, but I knew there's something in this tree. I'm like, all this fruit, it has to be edible. If any of you have ever seen a black walnut, when the nuts have this green hole on them, and when you take it off, there's this black sticky substance, and you have to wash that off, and then you have to crack the nut inside. So it's like a multi-layered process, and I was never able to crack it as like a 10-year-old, but I just do remember the abundance of just on the ground, covering the ground, right? This is just from one tree.
Yeah.
The pomegranates, when they would come in season in the autumn, I remember them being ripe and just like busting on the ground, just this beautiful, magenta fuchsia splashing on the ground, and us enjoy. I mean, we ate as much pomegranate as we could possibly eat, give them away, and it still was just like more and more and more. So I think the bounty that is just inherent in nature, it's easy to get away from that when you go to the grocery store and they're charging you $4 for 3 stalks of collard green.
Yeah.
As if you can make a pot of collard greens with 3 stalks of collard greens. But I think a part of us returning to our ancestral dietary ways also involves us getting back or very close to those productions of some of our food, because you don't want to have to compromise. And then even with organic, it's so much gray area into what's really happening with that food, and if it's really grown pesticide free. There's pesticides that will still qualify you to have organic labeling and everything, but
and the rules are off too. When I started in Whole Foods, I worked in Whole Foods like 2008. I opened up the store on 96 in Columbus in New York. And I remember the rules they had for what was organic and conventional, because everybody was confused about it. They were like, well, if it's organic and it falls on the floor, it's conventional now. It was all these kind of weird rules, and then the rules would change, and it was just like, it's not consistent.
Yes, yes. So just going back to the bounty and abundance that really is there if you have experience and you're able to have a little parcel of land, because you really don't need a whole lot of land to feed a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I know for us, we don't have a huge yard right now.
Yeah.
And we put in a few raised beds, and I mean, we had so much bok choy, we were giving it away to neighbors.
Yeah.
Our collard greens
and the birds
and the little vertical planter, which I love for people who don't have a lot of space, because this vertical planter takes up like 2 square feet of space, and we grew 42 plants and all this.
I mean, all that corn and tomatoes that was on there, that was crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, in a bounty of plant-rich foods are a part of ancestral diets. So that is to say, I know many people feel like there's just this pendulum, like you only advocate eating, plant foods exclusive. No, like that. Our ancestral way is that we did eat a bounty of fruits, of vegetables. And
the real plant based. Your diet is still based in plants and fruits and vegetables. It's like essentially it's like today you can classify a bear. It eats meat is like 10% of a bear's diet.
Exactly. Exactly. So getting into the R of celebrate, we have our resistant starches. Starches have been the mainstay, the bulk of calories for the great civilization. That's point blank period. For the great civilization, point blank period, starches have been the mainstay, but their preparation has been different and it varies, right? So I know in West Africa, where my paternal line, Benin, Yoruba, my paternal line comes from, it's very popular there. The pearl millet is very popular there. Sorghum is eaten. The tubers and the yams are very popular. I know we really love green banana, green plantain, and those things are very popular. But what the structure of those starches and the amount of resistant starch that it has are able to maintain the health of the people. And I know if you already have metabolic dysfunction, you're like, wow, these starches are going to wreak havoc on my blood sugar. But understand that people eating this way from birth, from when they're weaned, from breast milk, eating this way, they never develop those metabolic dysfunction. Like that is not an ancestral thing. And I'm not saying that, we never had illness in our civilizations. Our people never had illness, because honestly, if we look at it astrologically, illness is how a lot of our healers come to be. Okay?
We all get a dose.
Can be a part of Inter's plan for you to develop and to learn. So I'm by no means trying to make it seem like, you're perfectly healthy, a lot healthier than what we are now baseline. And the resistant starches were a big part of that.
Definitely.
A, the next letter in celebrate stands for ancestrally informed choices. So just as in G.L.A.D, we have that ancestral because it's important for us to know our lineage. And even if we're not able to trace our lineage generation to generation, 100%, we have science technology to help us get a picture. It's not 100% accurate, but then we also have our spiritual practices of meeting our ancestors, okay, who are ready and willing to give us guidance, especially on how to honor and live our ancestral traditions and our ancestral ways.
Yeah, and I wouldn't doubt it. I'm saying I doubted a little bit when it was shared with me my bloodline and where I came from. It wasn't until like 3-4 years later that I got blood work done and was like, oh wow, this is literally where my ancestor, where she said I was from, and it was like just boop 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 divination to even back it up. Oh, I'm from here. Oh wow, my mother's line, my father. Wow.
So we're still celebrating. We have the T in celebrate, which stands for time restricted eating, also known as intermittent fasting. That is a natural part of Black ancestral diets, really of ancestral diets, because this whole concept of not having a time that you cut off taking in food is new. It's a new concept that you can go and pop a hot pocket in the microwave at 11 p.m. like that. That we know that's not ancestral. So it's been getting a lot of attention and rave, and even as far as the benefits of giving your liver time to, you know, to detox, to get some of those glycogen stores out, you know, and it's important, but we have to include that tea in there for the time restricting eating because it is important. It is an important part of just maintaining a balance in health. And the E in celebrate stands for ethical, domestically raised meat, and also our wild meat and our wild fish. Now, we talk about ethics. We talked about it earlier, but I will say it again. The ethics that we're speaking about are our ancestral ethics. For us, consuming animals is a part of the circle of life. We can look even at science, right? When you do some of the vegan supplements, they are not as bioavailable. What does that mean? That means that our genetics, our bodies are not accustomed and not efficient at absorbing certain forms that don't come from the animal. So animals literally like pre-digest certain nutrients and make them more bioavailable to us. So we are not taking that out. In Black ancestral diet, absolutely, positively includes meat and animal products. To varying degrees, that's something that we can look at certain cultures where almost predominantly plant-based, and you know their meat consumption was for celebratory purposes. Other people, animal products, dairy products were part of daily consumption.
The Maasai.
So you know it has that range, but that is our G.L.A.D diet, and we definitely want to celebrate with you because it truly is the rebirth of something old that just needs attention. So many things get attention. We have Mediterranean and zone and this and
the blue zone diet.
Yeah, we have all of these diets, but it's like, let's get back to our roots, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it wasn't broken, it was interrupted, but purposefully. It was never broken.
Yeah.
And it is there, the evidence is there for what we should eat, how we can thrive, how we can honor our heritage and honor our ancestry. And I am very excited to do that with all of you who also have a desire to return to your ancestral ways.
Wow. That was amazing. All right. So for those of you who like this video, who like what you've seen, like what you heard, please like, comment, share, or subscribe. And for those of you who are interested in more information and connecting with us and staying up to date with us, go to astralauranation.com where you can stay in contact with us, know when we have more podcasts, more information, more classes that will be coming out in the store. And to those who think that they can slow us down, we're on to you. Keep doing what you think that you're doing. We're going to keep coming with the message. We're going to keep coming with the truth. We're going to keep following our ancestral ways. We're going to keep doing what we got to do and stand on business.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.